as strategy for 2020 onwards. And I'll tell you why. We've talked for a very long time about having a 5-year strategy, which is very nice. And then we realized 5 years is a little too long. So we brought it down to 3-year strategies, and that's far too long. The world is far too complicated, far too complex for us to really deal with it. So I think we have to have a completely different approach to strategy, and that's what I'd love to share with you right now. I've shared this with companies, very, very large companies, international companies, also with very small companies and with startups. And I think the best way to get the most out of this is I'll pause at different points. And if you have anything to say or add or would like to comment on, that'll be a good time for us to do that. So let's get going. Yes. I'm curious as to why you are attending this workshop. I'll tell you why. There's a couple of reasons. You could be attending just out of curiosity. You'd like to know more about what strategy is and how we deal with it these days. You could be doing this because you are in a current business and you'd like to do better in that business, or you're about to have a startup. I wonder if we can get some sense, Tracy, of how many people are in categories 1, 2, or 3. Can we do that?
Yes, you're all welcome to put number 1, 2, or 3 in the chat box.
Please, if you would, it'll just make it easier for me to be sure that I'm directing things to exactly where it needs to go to. Okay, that said, let's start with this. I want to give you an overview of how most people will deal with strategy, and you can see, I think it'll be very clear what its value is, why people pay so much money for strategy. When you get, if I have a conference which is for managers, they'll pay you X. If it's for executives, they'll pay you X plus. But if it's strategy, you can pretty much name your numbers because people are so enamored with this amazing thing called strategy and what it can do for them. So let's have a look at this. I think that most strategy today can be best titled greenhouse tomato strategy. And let me explain what I mean. If you want to get really, really beautiful rosé tomatoes, what you do is you grow them not out in the wild, but you grow them in a greenhouse. In the greenhouse, you can control them, control the bugs, you can control the air, you can control the light, you can control the moisture, you can control the temperature, you can control absolutely everything you possibly can. And at the end of the day, or end of the week or the month, wherever it's, I don't know, these things take, but at the end of the period, the growth period, you will always, always get perfect tomatoes. Definitely, absolutely, always. That is what we've always believed good strategy should be. Plan well, organize things, get it all together, and at the end, promise you'll have really, really good results. The only problem is that is complete and utter nonsense. So let me explain to you why. You can control everything from temperature to nitrogen in a greenhouse. You can't do that in business. Now, what people have tried to do is this. The big firms, international firms, will come in there, they'll do an analysis of where are you now, and they'll understand your business backwards and forwards, and they'll understand businesses like yours backwards and forwards. Then they'll say, where would you like to be in 5 years' time? And they'll project based on all the information they have available to them. All of that information, they'll be able to project what your business should be like in 5 years' time, what the business environment will be like in 5 years' time, what the economics will be like in 5 years' time. And in 5 years' time, they'll work out what the plan should be in order to get you from where you are now to where you're going to be in 5 years' time. Now, of course, if you believe that, you probably also believe in the tooth fairy. The reason why people take this so seriously is because they sound so plausible and they cost so much, obviously it must be good. Here's the reality. The reality is that the world today looks something like this. You've got graphs that you can't even understand. We're not sure where things are going and what they're all about. If you're looking at the world properly today, especially this week, it feels like there's a tsunami coming down on you. And then, even if it was a little quieter, There's so many options. You haven't got a clue what you're trying to do. That is a fair assessment of our current situation. Graphs that look like that, a tsunami coming down on your head, and extraordinary possibilities, and you have no idea what to do. How do you possibly develop a strategy in those contexts? I want to know which business strategist spoke about Putin committing suicide for either the Russian people, the Belarusians, the Ukrainians, and possibly half of the planet. Who would possibly have thought that that could happen? It is happening. So what are we supposed to do? Well, I think that the only thing we can possibly do is to first understand how the world works. Today, we're not living in a complicated world. We're living in a complex world. And complicated and complex are not the same. Let me give you an example. The simplest example I can, because I can make it too fancy. I realized I've made it too complex. I didn't get the results I wanted. So let's make it really simple. A wedding is complicated. I know we had one very recently in our family, and I know what the complications are. Who do you invite and who don't you invite? When you invite them, where do they sit? Then there's the dress and the suits and how they're going to look. And then you've got the seating, and then you've got who's going to do it under what conditions, and the caterers. There's so much to do. It's a really complicated exercise, and it's short. It doesn't last for months. It lasts for just the afternoon. And yet there's so much to do. So much effort has to go, and it's so expensive. It's extraordinarily complicated. You've got to get it right. The beauty is that you can download a checklist from the internet. It's all there. It's a checklist. It's been done before. You can do it again. You can even hire people who are really good at solving your wedding. A wedding is complicated, but you can build a checklist, and there's smart people who know how to help you make it all work perfectly. That's complicated. Having a good wedding, complicated. Having a good marriage, that's complex. And let's just see if we can unpack the difference between those two things. First off, there is no checklist anybody can give you on how to have a successful and a happy marriage that lasts. There isn't a checklist. No one's got one. Not only that, there isn't even an expert who can come in and say, do this, these are the 47 steps you need to take, and don't worry, you will have a happy marriage from now and forever. A marriage is complex. A wedding is complicated. And if you think of businesses, many other aspects of life, we need to divide them into what is complicated and what's complex. Complicated, you'll find an expert, they can fix it, you get the checklist. Complex is completely different. The world of business is complex. It's not complicated. It's complex. Now, the difference between complex and complicated is this. Key difference. Small things make a big difference in complex situations. Small things do not make that much of a difference in complicated situations. Just think of the things that could really destroy your relationship. Little things, small things. They don't even have to take terribly long, but they can really trash your relationship. The words that are said, things that are done, it's just too much, and how they're interpreted. So when we understand the difference between complex and complicated, we can begin to understand what strategy is all about. Okay, any comments on that, please? If you want to make a comment, Tracy?
No comments, yeah.
No comments, good.
Yes.
Okay, let's go. As long as that's perfectly clear, let's go. Good. Now, we're now going to have a look at how to develop a strategy. What we're going to do first off is you need to know what factors affect your success. Factors over which you have no control at all. This is important. Factors that you have no control over at all. Step number one. If you got that, good, excellent. You're 1/4 of the way through. Second, you have to develop what I call a functional strategy. That is, what are the drivers of your success? That's what a functional strategy means. How do you need to function so that you will be successful? And over these things, you have control. Third thing, set the goals for the long game, and I'll explain what the long game actually means. And fourth thing is make plans for the immediate future. If you can do those four things, I will put money on the fact that unless you've messed up on any one of them, you will have a successful business. It's just that simple. Only 4 steps. The problem with the 4 steps are complex, not merely complicated. Let's have a look at them quickly and we'll start going through them. Unfortunately, we won't have an opportunity to do this together where you'll be able to unpack the factors involved in your success in each one of your businesses. But I would urge you, as we're going through this, as long as you understand this deeply, what you have to do will be very clear, and then you can do it. And by the way, if you're not doing this, you'll be able to feel it in your bank balance. So here goes. It was Einstein who said, I believe, we don't know, because some people think he didn't. He said, if he only had 1 hour to solve an existential problem, a problem about your existence, he said, I would spend the first 55 minutes identifying the right question. Then I'd spend 5 minutes on the solution. I think that that's pretty clear. If you ask the wrong question, you will get the wrong answer. If you ask the wrong question, you'll get the wrong answer. What I've done over, and this really has evolved, and I think that I've been with the ORT long enough for Tracy to be able to confirm that these things I'm sharing with you have evolved. Over time, they've evolved, and the questions have got clearer and sharper, and possibly even easier and more accurate. So we need to focus on these questions and do them right. Let's begin. Here's the first bit. I want to show you an example of a set of scenarios that I developed for a company that's involved in investment. They're not involved in taking a family's investment and putting it in some part or other of the stock market. These are people who actually bring investments into a country. I did this for the country. They go out into the world and say, we've got this country, we've got these opportunities. People who've got $1 billion, $500 million, whatever it is, can come here and get involved in the industry or the investments in this country. That's what this is all about. I'm sharing this with you because I want to show you how you can get a sense of what scenarios are possible in your context, because I'm going to ask you to do this in one moment. Let's just look at this big context. So here are these people, their job is to attract foreign investment into their country. What are the factors of which you have no control, because you're not worrying about what you have control over? What are the factors that affect whether somebody who's got, whether an investor in the United States, either a company that's investing or an individual that's investing, who's got a lot of money, will come to this country as opposed to any of the other 196 countries around the globe and say, I want to put my money here? Well, there's only 2 things that'll get them to invest. Thing number 1, factor number 1 is what you're offering attractive? Is what you're offering attractive? You've got cobalt mines, and I know the world needs more cobalt. So you've discovered a mine, you've got a lot of cobalt, the mining price of cobalt is good, the mine is developed, you've seen that it's a rich strain, it's an opportunity, it's an attractive offer. Or you could say the government has changed their policy and now they're moving into high tech or into pharmaceuticals. Because of that, there's opportunities for. So you've got to come up with an attractive offer. Now, the reason why I said that the country has no control over this, because whether the offer is attractive depends on whether, in fact, there is cobalt under the ground. If all you've got is zinc or something else, it's very different. Similarly, you can say we want to get into pharmacy, but we don't have enough expertise. So the country would have to find what are attractive offers that they have in order to attract investment. You don't have to have anything special, but let's say that the government said we're no longer importing tomatoes into our country. Finished. Banning the import of tomatoes, therefore we're forcing our population to go into tomatoes. And somebody who's been growing tomatoes for the last 100 years in South Africa, him, his father, and his grandfather, he says, let's get into that place and let's go there and see if we can build a business there. That is a highly attractive offer. If you don't have attractive offers, don't worry, nobody will come. But even if you have attractive offers, do the investors have appetite? Let's say that the country we're talking about is Ghana or I don't know, Congo. Do the investors have appetite for coming into Africa? Do the investors have appetite from Europe to invest their money so far away from home? Unless the investors have appetite, you can have the most attractive offers, but you'll fail. So all you can work out in terms of what scenarios are available to you is to work out what are the basics of what it is that you do that will make you successful, of which you don't have to have control. Offer attractiveness, invest appetite in their case. Now, based on that, you can come up with 4 possibilities. Let's look at bottom right. You've got a very attractive offer. Very attractive offer. The problem is that there's very low investor interest in coming from Europe into Ghana to grow tomatoes. Very little interest, but it's such an opportunity because the government's prepared to really support this because they're tired of paying import duties on tomatoes. It's like having empty boutique. Boutique's got beautiful clothing, nobody's coming to buy. The place is empty. Or you could have look at top right. You could have a really attractive offer, and investors are so excited about having some place to put their wealth in a different currency, in a different market, where they look like they're going to get great returns, and it turns into a Christmas rush. Or what could happen is that the investors would love to find some place in Africa to put money, because Africa is a growing economies. It's a growing population. It's got real possibilities. The problem is there's nothing they're offering that's interesting. Or bottom left, that would be an out of stock, where you've got people who want the goods, but you're just out of stock. Or it could be that, in fact, what you've got is the desert store, where you have nobody coming to your desert, nobody's in the desert to buy, and not only that, even if they were in the desert, you have nothing to sell. That would be the desert store. So what you can do is you can say, where are we now? In the case of the organization I'm working with, and the country I'm working with, they're probably where the circle is over here. They've got investor appetite. The attractiveness is more or less okay. They're here. That's the reality. So what I'd like you to do now, please, please, if there are any questions on this, let's get it clear now. These are the background against which you work, of which you have absolutely no control, but you must understand. And if you can understand it, it'll be very easy to be able to plot where you are. What can you do about this? Nothing much, other than understand it and adapt your strategy to match this. So please, any questions at this stage before we go on?
There's nothing in the chat box yet, Ian.
Okay, if anything comes up, just interrupt, because then we'd like everybody to be on the same page.
Of course.
Perfect. Okay, so if that's what I would like you to do, is I'd like you to think of your own business and ask yourself, what are the 2 axes, the X and the Y axis? You can come up with probably 6 or 7 things that will really make you successful. I think you've got to get to the heart of the matter. And getting to the heart of the matter isn't a quick thing that you can do in the next 5 minutes. Unless you've done this before and you've actually been thinking about it before, you probably won't get it. But if you could try and work out for your own business, what would it look like? I'd like to give you some examples from other things, and you can see if you can get to this when it gets to your own business. There's a fascinating business that was started. It's quite successful. And I'll tell you how the business started, and you can see why you need this for every type of business. The woman who started this business, the sister dates a lot. And because she dates a lot, she likes clothing. And because she's young, they're always taking pictures of each other on dates. So that all your friends know where you went out, what parties you attended. And you don't want your friends to see you in exactly the same outfit every single party. If you're a party animal, you can go to 5, 6, I don't know what it is, parties a month, and you don't want them to see you in exactly the same clothes. And she said her sister went out and spent $2,000 on clothes. She said her sister hadn't got $2,000 to spend on clothes. And that led her to a business that's fantastic. The business is called, well, I think it's called Own the Ramp. And essentially what it is, it's a clothing rental store. So you can go into the store, and for the evening you can rent high heels, whatever clothing you want to rent, on obviously undergarments, on overgarments, and they'll be beautifully clean, very stylish, really nice, and it won't break the bank. You won't have to spend your 2,000 Rand on a single one dress, but you could be wearing a 2,000 Rand dress. So that's a great business. What are the factors that would make that business great? One is you'd have to have people who really worry about how they appear, and you also have to see to that the clothes that you've got for them are stylish. The clothes that you've got are clean, are neat, because you don't have to put on clothes which aren't freshly laundered, beautifully pressed, and so on. So there'll be a couple of criteria which you say, if I can get those things right, it'll work. Can I get the right clothes at the right prices? Can I have them clean, washed, returned, and ready to go fast enough so that they'll be available for people to look at, and so on? If you opened up an electrical business in the suburbs, what are the two things that really will determine your business? Quite obviously, you've got to be skilled. That's clear. And I think that you possibly would have to be reliable. I think that when somebody needs an electrician, we're not talking about building a building, we're talking about fixing your house. You probably want somebody who's available. And there are many ways in which people can become available. For example, there's a company in the United States that does air conditioning in Miami, where it can get very, very hot. And you phone them up and you say, my air conditioning is not working in the house and we can't sleep. You've got to come over. They say, we're terribly busy. We can't come over today. We'll come tomorrow morning. You say, fabulous. You ask your boss to give you time off because you're going to be waiting at home. Remember, there's no help. You're waiting at home for the air conditioner people to come over so that they can fix it. You wait the whole morning, they don't show. Eventually you phone and say, what's happening? They say, we're so busy, we can't get it done, we'll come tomorrow. So you go to your manager and say, hi, I need another half day off. He says, come on, what's this? And so what you do is he says, if you take tomorrow off, it's coming off your leave. One of the companies had as their motto, on time or you don't pay a dime. On time or you don't pay it. Because they realize, what's the one pillar of success in my business? Obviously, we have to know what we're doing. The second pillar is on time or you don't pay a dime. So they've developed the entire system. They're about 25% more expensive than anybody else, but it's certainly a lot cheaper than taking 2 days of work. And the satisfaction. So they have more people available. The structures of how they get people to different places are correct. So if somebody gets stuck in traffic, there's always a flow to get there on time. But they've worked out what the parts of their business are. If you are Apex Financial Investments, what are the two things that you have to do? You don't have to be a brilliant investor. I promise you don't have to be a brilliant investor. You're all investing in exactly the same stuff as everybody else, and all you do is just follow the market. Why does somebody go to Apex as opposed to someone else? Only one reason. You like the fella from Apex. You trust the fella from Apex that he actually cares a bit about your business and about your money. Yes, and the more he cares, obviously, the better. But the second part is not his investment prowess. That's already done for him. For him, it may be trust. So have a look in your business, take a couple of minutes and see if you can write down tentative answers to what makes your business successful or unsuccessful contextually, and out of your control. Whether somebody trusts you is out of your control. Whether you have access to the markets going out of your control. You've got to work out what are those factors that would make you successful that are not in your control. Please just drop those down now.
No comments, Ian.
No, it's fine. Just let people make a note and
Sure.
Then we'll move on. Thinking about your business, the two factors in your business, primary factors of which you have no control, but really are going to determine where you are and from which you'll be able to develop something that looks like this. Because that is the scenarios which could happen in your environment. All you've got to do once you know what the scenarios are is to be able to say, I know where we are today. I can't change anything. If a major investment house was being indicted because they have been ripping off their clients, it gives the entire industry a bad name.
Ian, please may I ask if you can please repeat the question for participants?
Sure. The question is this: what are the factors? I've got an X and a Y axis on this. What are the factors that are out of your control, but that will affect your business? I put over here, factors affecting your success over which you have zero control. You have no control over whether international investors are interested in your country. You have no control over that. It depends on the economy in their country, depends on too many different factors. Is the offer itself attractive? Your country either has it or doesn't have it, and it's beyond the control of that organization that's supposed to go out there and attract money into the country. Looking at things over which you have no control, but which define your context.
We have COVID, we've got weather, war, again, the pandemic, and Ivan has said product financing.
Very good. The challenge always is to be sure that these are outside of your control, and if they are, you find, and then what you do, not now because it will take you too long to do this, is once you've got those, the two pillars of the two axes of your, this is called scenarios, two axes of your scenarios, you'll work out if the axis X is high, or if the axis X is low, what does that do? And then this, if we look over here, the Y axis over here, investor appetite, it could be high investor appetite or low investor appetite. If you look at attractiveness, which is the X-axis, you could either have high attractiveness or low attractiveness, and anything varying in between that. And then you can say, I know we're about here now. That just sets the context and allows me to understand the situation in which I'm working. It's a relatively quick, relatively easy thing to do, but it will give you a lot of confidence in your ability to function and what you need to do, which is what we're going to be referring to and talking about now, is how do I respond in a context like that. But if you don't have a clear idea of what's going on, you probably will mess up. I'm going to go back to one more slide. If the situation analysis looks like this, and you're completely overwhelmed, easiest way to get some sense is to worry about where you're operating and get some clarity as to what that context really looks like. And that's what we're doing first. This is a situation analysis. Any other points or ideas? And I can respond to them. We'll go on to question number 2.
Michael has said interest rates and the political situation.
Very good. I mean, I'm not sure exactly what Mike's involved in, but those are two which are terrific, and they'll be very, very helpful. Missing those will mean that you'll function in a very different way. Good. So let's have a look at this now. There's things about the future that we need to know. And I've always bothered about how do you actually know what exactly is the future? And the short answer is it's very hard to know exactly what the future is. And then I came across an interview with this man called William Gibson. He's a writer, a science writer, science fiction writer. And in one of his books, he says, in the interview, he said, the future is here already. The future is here already. It's just not evenly distributed. And that's terribly important. That insight, terribly important. The future is here already. It's just not evenly distributed. So let me give you an example of what he's talking about. This is the Amazon Go shop. This is the one, I believe, in Seattle. There are about 3 or 4 of them around the world. What Amazon started doing a couple of years ago, just as an experiment, is to create a shop that will give you a completely different shopping experience. I don't know if any of you have ever gone into a supermarket to buy something towards the end of the day when you're in a rush. You know the aisles, you know where everything is. You get around there and you're quick, and you put the stuff in the basket and you drawn up your lists, and then you wait. And you wait behind the long queue of people who are also waiting behind the long queue. One of the queues, of course, is held up because the lady couldn't find the price on the bag, and I have to call somebody to find the price on the bag, and you wait. Amazon Go is a massive infusion of technology. What they do is this: as you walk into the Amazon store, you open your phone where you have your Amazon account, and you pass that through with that open, and the turnstile opens as you come through because you're an Amazon member. Then you walk up and down the aisles. You can see things on the aisles. You can put them in your pockets. You can put them in a bag. You can put them anywhere you want. You can take them out. You can put them back again. Put them back again. If you look at your phone whilst you're shopping, you'll see that your phone is adding up everything that you've got. As you take those cookies, which you know you shouldn't have bought, right? You take those cookies and you put them into your back pocket, into your pocket of your bag pocket. And they say, oops, shouldn't have that. You take it out your bag and you put it back on the shelf. You'll see it comes off your account. The store is completely electronic. Oh, by the way, there's nobody to help you there. There are no people. When you finish shopping, whether you put it in a bag or you put in your pocket, you just walk out and that's it. When you're out, you look at your phone and it'll have added up how much you've spent and on what, and it'll charge your Amazon account. That's called Amazon Go. That's the shopping of the future. It's automatically replenished because the algorithms and information and the data that they've got telling them exactly what shelves are empty, need to be restocked, where the stock is older and needs to be replaced. All that stuff is done electronically by machines where nobody can see it, out of the way, and you just have this extraordinary shopping experience. Now, there's only probably, I don't think there's a handful of these on the planet yet. But it is the future. That is where retail shopping is going to go to. If they can do that with retail food, which is the number of SKUs, stock keeping items they have in a supermarket can be huge, thousands. It must be easier to do in other stores. In which case you ask yourself, so will we have tellers? Will we have shelf packers? Will we have people walking up and down just checking that nobody's pilfering? This obviates all of that. Okay, so this is the future. I'll give you the future is not necessarily only in first world countries. There's a form of payment called M-Pesa, which was developed in Kenya. And it's basically how you bank when you don't have a bank account, and how you can move money and pay for things without a bank account. And it's extraordinarily successful in Kenya. They've tried to replicate in other parts of the world. It hasn't worked all that well. The fact is, it gives you a view of what could be, what could happen elsewhere. And I think that's the really interesting part, is that there are pockets of extraordinarily interesting, advanced things around the world. You don't only have to talk about technology. If you have a look at what are the most edgy marketing firms doing in the world? What are the most edgy law firms doing? What are the most edgy, and whatever it is they're doing, what are the really, really edgy guys doing? And there's some staggering stuff going out there. The future is here already. It's just not evenly distributed. But it's coming to a place near you sooner or later. So we don't have to worry too much that the future is unknowable. It's not completely unknowable. It's here already. It's just not evenly distributed. Now, given that gives you a lot of comfort if you want to worry about strategy. The reason for that is because we might not be able to see exactly what's going on, but we get some vague impressions of something that's going on. I mean, I'm not quite sure if that's a man or a woman or two men or what. There is something going on there. And as I get closer and closer to it, the impressionistic view I have of the future gets clearer and clearer and clearer. And our challenge when we work on strategy is to try and work out how we can get clearer faster. And the reason for that is only because of this. Let me use an agricultural example because it's so clear. You cannot reap what you didn't sow. And sowing too late is too often too late. Try and imagine a farmer. He's standing in his field. He's raises his eyes to heaven. He says, Lord, you have to help me. You've got to help me. I've got to have a good oos this year. I've got to have a good harvest this year. Lord, I need it so badly. I need your help. I'm begging you. I have to have a good harvest this year. Lord, I promise, I'll put seed in next year. That doesn't work. You can't reap what you didn't sow. And if you sow too late, it's too often too late. So our challenge when we look at strategy is we're not looking at tomorrow. We're not trying to survive tomorrow. We're trying to build a business that'll last for years. It may take a long time to develop, and I'll show you how that why and how that works. But we have to start now. We can only start now if we have some sense of what's really going on. And that's what we use the scenarios for. So on with that, we can get going. The future belongs to those who prepare for it today. If you do not prepare for it today, I promise you, the future will not be yours. The future belongs to those who prepare for it today. So I'm going to give you an example, which I've used before. I doubt too many of you are in the field of women's boutiques, but it's a nice example, and I think it'll be easy for us to get to the heart of what we're trying to do by using this. We know what the context is. We've done our scenario planning. We have 4 possible scenarios along the 2 most important factors that determine the success of the fashion industry in your country, or even planet Earth, fashion industry. And you've got those things together. You understand exactly where you're positioned right now. So you've got the context. Now you're ready to build your scenario. And you ask yourself, what should I do? And I think that the most important thing we need to do, sorry, let me get to here quickly. When we look at the various possibilities, scenarios you could have one which in the matrix I showed you a few minutes ago was top right, where everything is going according to you. There's appetite from investors, and you've got great investment opportunities. It's terrific. Or it could be okay, where you've got really, really good possibilities, but not that many people are all that mad about investing where you are right now. Or you could be in a situation which is things are not as good as they could be, either because you don't have the client base who are looking for you, or because you don't have the stock, or it could be just ouch. You've failed on all scores in terms of the situation. Mm-hmm. So we have to ask ourselves, how do we function? How do you function if you don't know exactly what's happening? How do I plan for tomorrow if I don't know what's happening? Because any one of those 4 scenarios could happen, and it's beyond my control. The answer to that is to develop a functional strategy. How do I need to function today, tomorrow, for the next 5 or 10 years? And I'll tell you why that's important just now. Over the long period, if I'm going to be as successful as possible. If it's an ouch situation, I want to know at least I'm not falling over. If it's a terrific situation, I must be sure that I'm taking advantage. Generally, if you open up this conversation to a group of people in the company, what they probably will do is you'll find that if the senior people who will dominate the conversation are all sales-oriented, which means they're all optimistic, they'll say, listen, don't bring us down to earth with all sorts of bad scenarios. Let's think positive, And so they develop a scenario, they develop a strategy for a terrific situation. Problem, an ouch situation breaks out, and then they're completely insolvent. Or if they're a bunch of accountants, they would say, no, we're conservative people, we plan for the worst. We're going to plan for an ouch situation. We plan for an ouch situation, and to your surprise, terrific breaks out. And they're all your competitors, they're making money, and you're just barely keeping alive. How do you plan for multiple scenarios? How do you plan for that stuff? You want to plan in such a way that you will do as well as possible. This is the point, as well as possible in those scenarios. You can't do better than you're doing in a bad situation, and you can't do even better than you're doing in a terrific situation. You can only do as well as possible in those contexts. So how do we do that? We develop what I call a functional strategy. Imagine a store called the Looking Great, and what they do is they sell really nice clothing, attractive clothing for women between the ages of 30 and 45 or something like that, who are very fashion conscious, have money, not tons of the stuff, but they have money and they like looking good and they like dressing well. And that's their market. And that's what type of store they enjoy. They love that store and they want to do as well as they can. They've now developed their scenarios, how things could go, and now what? How do you develop your strategy? Well, don't bother trying to aim at any one of these scenarios. You've got to aim at functioning across every scenario that can be, so that you'll be as successful as possible. And how you do that is just this. You identify what is it? Let me go back to my original question here. What are the drivers of your success over which you have control? What drives success in your business over which you have control? So let's take that question. We go to look at our clothing store. The factors over which drive my success if I'm in this store are 3. Number 1, you have to have long-term customers. How do I know that? Because it's harder to get a new customer than it is to resell to customers over 15 or 20 years, the same customer again and again and again and again. That's so easy. So whenever you bring in a new customer, you know they're going to be with you for the next 15 years. You've got to have long-term customers if you want to be successful in this industry. Next, you've got to be constantly relevant. Nobody goes to a store if the store is not relevant to them. Relevant means I like to look fresh, I like to look modern, like to look pretty, I like to be well-groomed, I like to be casual. Everything in that store speaks to me. It's constantly relevant. Whenever they get new stuff, it's always, that's so cool. That the stuff is just right. It's all the stuff I like to wear. Long-term customers, and they're constantly relevant to them. Last thing, they have to buy well. If you buy well, you don't have a rack at the end of the summer where you're selling the stuff at discount just to get it off your books and to be able to pay the cost of those dresses. If you can have long-term customers and you're constantly relevant and you buy well, your success will be assured. That's it. Now, let's just think about these long-term customers. Long-term customers don't happen because you say, hi, I'm signing up for a long-term. And by the way, you're not allowed ever to buy anywhere else. You can't do that stuff. And even companies that are nowadays, that are realizing that if they lock you into their services, you're less likely to deal with them than a company that if you want to leave, just leave. If you buy a cell phone contract and you have a situation like I have at the moment where you can't speak on that particular cell phone in your house because they don't have decent coverage, there's a man standing at the door with a baton and he won't let you out that door until you've paid your contract 2 years later. So nobody wants to deal with people like that. Your long-term customers have to be because you satisfy them. You treat them correctly, you're interested, you're there when you want them. Some people like to be talked to all the time. If you're one of those people, they do that. If you're one of those people who say, don't come near me, I'll call you if I want to, you pick up those cues and you behave accordingly. Do all these three things and you've got to be successful. So this is what it would look like. Constantly relevant. Okay, because I'm constantly relevant, I'm developing long-term customers. And because I've got long-term customers, I'm able to do something which other people can't do. I'm able to buy well. Why can I buy better than anybody else? Because I don't have to guess if my customers will want this stuff. I know they want this stuff. I know what they want. Because that I'm constantly relevant. Because I'm constantly relevant, I get more and more long-term customers, which makes it easier for me to buy well, which is why I can keep. This is a virtuous cycle. It goes round and round. And this virtuous cycle, eventually spins on its own. In the first year, it moves very slowly. After 5 years of buying well and being constantly relevant and having long-term customers, so you can buy well and you can be constantly relevant, and you've got long-term customers, the wheel is spinning faster and faster and faster. It doesn't spin in the first year fast. It turns in the first year. By the second and third year, it's already moving quite nicely. By the 15th year, you've got a great business, That's what's called a functional strategy. These three things here, or could be four. If you've got 26, you completely don't get it. I would suggest that no one has more than 5 items. In my experience, I've actually found one company that actually could have a functional strategy based on only one thing, but it was quite exceptional. It was Emerson Energy. Only those ones. For the rest, they all have got 2, 3, more likely 3, 4 aspects, keys to what they have to do to deliver extraordinarily successfully to their clients. Let's go back to the question again. Your functional strategy are the drivers of your success. Buy well, constantly relevant, long-term customers. And I have control of all those things. I have control over whether my customers are going to be long-term because of how I treat them. I treat them well, they come back. I have control over relevance. Because I know them more and more, I can, and I ask them, I can keep relevant. And because of knowing them and being relevant, I can buy better. Now I have control of all those factors. If you understand the scenarios, you know what your functional strategy is, now you're at a stage where you're ready to start working on the goals. Can we just take a pause and please let's get some comments or questions along the ideas here. I'll leave those 3 ideas up because I think that's important. Those first 2 ideas are important. Let's just talk to those, please. Any questions, any clarity that you need right now? And then I'll show you exactly how we go about doing this stuff.
Ian, it's Jody here. Let me put. So
yes, Jody.
For me, I don't know how to. Okay, you should see me soon. Oh well, you can't. Long-term customers. What happens if you always specialize in something and so your customers are always new? So you don't have long-term customers.
I think that would probably happen is let's presume, for example, that you're in the photographic industry and you were taking photographs for magazines or for billboards. Your ability to do extraordinarily interesting work, whether you do it for one customer or for a slew of customers, is because you're satisfying a very simple need for every one of them. And your challenge is to try and work out what is that need of which I have control, which they have, and I can satisfy. And that's what you're really trying to look for. So it may be the quality of your work, the fact that your work is different, the fact that your work is edgy, the fact that your work actually gets to the heart of what people want to say through the picture. And I think that those are factors which you have control over, and you will have multiple, you will sell them to a wide variety of different agencies at different points in your life. But essentially, it's the same thing. And I think that's what we're looking at when you're talking about having a customers. And I don't think that you necessarily have to have long-term customers. Go back to this here. These three things here were very relevant to the clothing industry. You would need to have something different for yourself. For example, I would think, please bear with me if I'm being frivolous. I just don't understand enough. But if you in your business, I would think that reputation counts enormously. I think if you'd been on the front cover of an international magazine, whether it's Geographic or one of the news magazines, that gives you a credibility that's extraordinary and puts you out the pack. I think that if people feel that you're somebody who's able to find edgy things, like those pictures that you did of poor people in I'm not sure, a slum somewhere in South Africa, when you can do really poignant pictures and you can capture the essence of what people want to see in a picture like that, so that it really moves them, you've got to be successful. So my sense is that if you're looking at the factors that will make you successful, it would be, you've got to work your reputation. You've also got to see to that the type of stuff that you have is not, I'm not sure what they will call it today, but in the olden days, when I was a kid, used to buy chocolates and a box of chocolates. They always had a picture on the front. And it was really a chocolate box picture. It was absolutely perfect. It was nothing. It didn't inspire anybody. It was just there. You want to be on the polar opposite of that. Everybody looks at your picture. Somehow they feel something very strongly. I'm not sure what the other factors are. But you can see what sort of things we're getting at. So yours wouldn't be long-term customers. Yours would be reputation. My pictures make you feel something really strongly, and or whatever, or capture the essence of something in an unusual way. And they can see when they do that, other people just don't do that. I think that's what we're looking at. Does that help you at all, Jody?
Yeah, but in the arts, like going to a dinner the other night with very fancy people, oh, you're the best. Oh, you know, you always treat it, I love your work, and, you know, you're so famous, but that does not bring...
Pay the bills.
Pay the bills. In the art world, maybe in other worlds, but in the art world, it's how to shift that dynamic that people buy the artworks. So anyway, I don't want to take up too much.
No, don't. Then you've got three things. Obviously your reputation, obviously the power of your work, and the third part is focusing on the monetization of your efforts. And that, if you're not focusing on the monetization, then you're missing something. So if you had to ask me quickly off the top of my head, and I know very, very little about you, except what Mom told me and what I've seen, if you had worried about reputation, and you're worried about the quality of your work, that it does exactly what the ad agency wants, or what the magazine wants, and the third part is you monetize that stuff, you've got to be successful. So a key factor with you is monetizing it. Yes. as well as reputation, and as well as the quality. So please don't be seduced by or misled by what I've got here. That's relevant to them. Yours, I think, will be the other three.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. Anybody else would like to make a comment? Okay. If you're not sure how to get to your functional strategy,
sorry,
I'm going to give you a quick.
I'm
yes,
sorry
sure.
to interrupt. David has posted a question. He said, what about a service provider in a service industry? I hear you mention reputation. For instance, training and education, financial service, etc. in a competitive environment. Do things like creativity, being first in market with your presentations, etc. help?
My sense is that if you're going to be, if you want part of your functional strategy, for example, to be first in market, you've always got to be the person who's always first in market. Let me give you an example quickly. There was a chemical company, American chemical company. I worked for them, so I don't want to tell you who they are because they lost the plot. But they started off by being, there was the family name Labs. Labs was part of their title. They didn't refer to them as chemical manufacturers. They would call themselves something Labs. And they did that because they would develop really, really edgy components which could be used in all sorts of different things. And then they'd start selling them quickly. And as soon as they saw that it was picking up, they sold them to their nearest competitor. They sold them to their nearest competitor. And then they came back again, developing some more chemicals, edgy stuff, and sold those to their nearest competitor. All they were a lab. They were a creative lab, and they made a huge amount of money by doing that. But all they were doing was took money up to, say, the first 2 or 3 years of monetizing it, then they sold it to the nearest competitor. And they were selling to the nearest competitor where the real money came from, as opposed to their power was the creativity. When they lost the plot, they became another chemical manufacturer. I don't know if that helps at all.
Thanks, Ian. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, and if the same thing with training and developing yourself, whatever it is. There are a set of questions. So let me get back to this. There are a set of 9 questions that I think you'll be getting all these things. I just want to show you quickly how they look. And then you can see, you can do them afterwards on your own. They're best done quite slowly. I've got 10 here because some of the 1 or 2 of these are not going to be for you, but they could be. If you want to find your functional strategy, those 3 or 4 different things that are at the heart of what you do, what you need to ask yourself is, what's the profile of our most loyal current clients, or the clients we wish were most loyal, or the clients, if we haven't got a business yet, that we're aiming to deal with? What's their profile? Now, it's not their names. Don't write down, we deal with this mine and that mine and that mine. What's their profile? The profile may be they're a matured mine, they are a startup, they're a high tech, they are edgy, they're young, whatever it is. Try and find out the profile. Now, if you deal with individuals, ask yourself, what is the individual who seems to somehow or other would be most interested, has been most interested in buying your goods or your services? And you might say, I know I'd love to deal with people on their way to becoming extraordinarily wealthy with my private equity firm, but the reality is that if I look at my most loyal clients, they're widows, they're widowers, they're young people who've inherited a lot of money from parents and need somebody to look after them. There's somebody, what's the profile? They all need looking after, something like that. So that's what you'd be doing. Then you might ask yourself the question, so I know who my loyal clients are today. If you have loyal clients already and you aren't building it, then you'd add on question 2. Question 2, if you've got clients already, would be, so where should I be focusing? Up to now, all I've been doing is I've been focusing on a particular group of people, particular type of market segment, and there's something adjacent to that, which is not too far away from where I am. I could be focusing on that because I know how to do it, and I can take my skill set and apply it somewhere else. A key aspect that you should be asking yourself as part of this functional strategy questionnaire is, what problem do you really solve for them? What problem do you really solve for them? And if you were looking at the air conditioning industry in Miami, what problem do you really solve for them? Is I save them time. Anybody can fix the air conditions. What problem do I really solve? I'm reliable. I'm reliable. Because I'm reliable, I save them time. And you try and work out what it is, what's the real problem you solve for people, because often it's not the obvious one. It's not the obvious one. If you looked at that clothing shop, you said to me, what's the real problem? I sell clothes. People don't want to walk around naked. No, that's not it. It's they want to go to a store and see a plethora of clothing that they would love to own, as opposed to going through rack after rack after rack, trying to find something that you look decent in. Yeah. Then what could you be the best in South Africa or in the world at? If you could be the best, what could that be? You might not be able to be the best at the best store, women's clothing store in South Africa. What could you be the best at? You could be the best at your customer service, relating to people. They feel comfortable in there. They don't feel bullied. They don't feel put upon. They don't feel ignored. Or you could be the best in the world because you are always up to date with the trends. Next things. The people who run your organization, your company, your two-person business, or even yourself. We'll come back to this more and more just in a moment. What are you most passionate about? The fact is that we all live in the shadow of the leader. Whatever the top team is passionate about will be where the focus is. It'll be where the car moves in that direction. The top team are driving it, and they're in control. And they set the tone, and in a lot of ways, they control where it's going to go to. So if you can work out what they're most passionate about. One of my best stories in this regard is an international engineering firm that opened up in South Africa. Really first-rate, one of the big ones in the world. They opened in South Africa and they closed in a couple of years. I worked with them for 2 of those couple of years that they were around here, so I got to know the company pretty well. They couldn't cut it. And I could not understand why these people were simply not able to make a living. And what became absolutely clear to me was that these people in an engineering firm, the top management loved engineering. You said, well, what's wrong with that? Well, the problem was that they loved engineering so much that they didn't love monetizing the engineering. They were far more concerned with coming up with a fantastically clever solution to your problems, but they didn't worry about how much is that going to save you, how much would you be prepared to pay for. They weren't worried about the money. And because they weren't worried about the money, they just didn't make any money in this country. The top team would sit around over lunch and talk about engineering. They wouldn't sit around over lunch and talk about money. They had to be worried about money. That's why they failed. Okay. Where can we be most profitable? That's quite an important thing to look at, because there's some parts of your business which are going to be money slurpers and other parts which are going to be money makers. Look which they are, and then you can see where it's possible to really, really focus on where the profit is, because you're in business to make profit. Profit is oxygen. And I don't know if any of you wake up in the morning and say, today I want to get a lot of oxygen in me. We just take it. Profit is exactly the same. Don't have profit, you can't survive. You don't have oxygen, you can't survive. It shouldn't be your motivation. It should be more interesting stuff. Then you could ask yourself, where could we add most value to our constituents? Not where we could make more money from them, but where can we add most value to them? Some of you who are in non-profits, this is the more important question. Where can you add most value to them? If you're in certain types of professional services, the real thing is where can you add most value to the people that you work with? A question you also need to ask, depending obviously on your context, is where have you got the most to lose? Where have you got the most to lose? If you messed up on one thing, where do you have the most to lose? I would suggest, sorry, Jody, your name's coming up right in front of me. I would think that if you start taking photographs that look like chocolate boxes, even if they were very pretty, I think you'd lose most by doing that, by getting, she's the lady who does stuff which really can be generated or found anywhere at all. And that will be where you've got the most to lose. You ask yourself then, what is your moat? What's your moat? A moat is a little rivulet that goes around the castle. So it stops people coming into the castle, because if you can pull up your drawbridge so that nobody can actually get into the castle by going over the bridge. That's called a drawbridge, because you can draw it back and then you can't get into the castle. It'll give you a temporary reprieve from the army that's around you. Obviously, they'll go away because they can't get in, and then they'll come back with, say, rock throwers or fire throwers, someone trying to get in. But a moat gives you a little bit of breathing space. What's your moat? What gives you a bit of breathing space? It may be your reputation, it may be your finances, it may be the models that you still got going that you could still sell, the goods that you could still sell. You've got a bit of time. You've got some time. That's your moat. And then the last thing is, having asked these questions, and there will almost definitely not be more than 9, including this one, is what are the drivers of our business success? Don't try to get to your business success, the functional strategy, first. Go through these questions. If something has come to mind now, that's terrific, but just check if these questions will change your answer. Going through every one of these questions, once they're relevant, and they're probably about 8 or 9, 7, 8 or 9, which are relevant to you in your business, that should lead you to the answer to number 10. What drives our business success? And from that, you'll say, that's my functional strategy. Now I know what it is I'm going to do. If you can do that, you're going to find that you've got yourself a really good functional strategy. Are there any questions on this, by the way?
Yeah, nothing specifically on this at the moment, but a question from earlier was, yes. Obviously through COVID, a lot of people chose to support local, shop online. How do you now re-attract your customers that left you to shop online or to shop local?
It's very, very industry specific. So the answer is very industry specific. It makes a big difference in all sorts of industries. It's a problem I'm grappling with now myself. I'm involved in a synagogue that had video services for Chagim and for Shabbat, and so it was broadcast. The problem is now, how do you get those same people to come back into the sanctuary and actually come to shul physically? So I understand what the problem is. And it's not an easy one to deal with, but the fact is that you're going to have to, whether you beat them or join them, you've got to try and get to that, and it'll really be very, very industry specific. There are answers, obviously, but the answers are very part of how your business is run, where it's positioned, and so on. So I'm sorry, there isn't a quick answer, but it is a genuine question.
Thank you, Ian.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, let's move on. So we've got our functional strategy. You found it. It's those 3 words in this context. And now what you have to do is you have to get to a stage where, armed with your functional strategy, you can say, what are my goals? Now, what do you mean? Once you've got a functional strategy, you might say, my goal for this year is to attract 50% of those people who went somewhere else online back to me. My other goal is to find myself 25 or 30% more new customers that I haven't dealt with before. That's my goal for this year and next year, my goal for the rest of this year. So what you'll do is, armed with your functional strategy, understanding your situation, you're then in the best position to say, these are the goals that I need to have right now for my success. The goals are that piece that if you put in place, you'd actually get there. Now, if you're trying to work out how do I wean people back to me, that's the little red thing he's holding in his hand. They'll come here, and then you achieve your goal. But I think that having very clear goals will start appearing to you once your functional strategy is clear and you've done the proper situational analysis and you've got your scenarios. So then the challenge would be set a manageable number of goals. A goal is something big that you want to achieve over the next year or 2 or 3. And if it's a 5-year goal, break it down into what must I get done? What has to be done by the end of this year or in the next 18 months? Don't make those goals too far away so that it's hard for you to focus on them. Try and get your goals to be goals that you think are possibly manageable, possibly real, and put down more goals than you'll actually deal with. And I'll tell you why. Once you've identified, I've got these 4 goals, you then go on to the next thing. And you say, okay, terrific. What's the plan to achieve that? And as you start working through the plan, you might say, that goal is not a 1-year goal. That's a 6-month goal. May even be shorter than if I plan properly. Or that goal is a 3-year goal. I've got to plan differently. But between your goals and your plans will change. And they have to change. And they can change fast. Only a fool would stick to a goal because I set that down and that was our goal and I've told all my staff that that's our goal. Will then stand up and say, hi, I told you. Remember I told you this? Remember how seriously I was? I was wrong. Or I didn't know this was coming. We couldn't have seen this coming. But those people who want to stick to goals, come hell or high waters and make it work, not all goals are worth it. But by tying your goals with your plans and saying, this is the plan to get to that goal. And as you see the goal change, dump it or readjust your plans. But these 2 parts must change. Nothing is cast in stone. It is nothing as offensive as a company that thinks that a year or 2 or 3 years later, you're going to check them on their goals and assess their plans and did they achieve them all? Of course they could achieve them all. It's not hard, but it would be wrong. There's a thing called key performance indicators, KPIs, key performance indicators. And what you're supposed to do is you will get bonused if you hit all your KPIs. Hit all your KPIs, then you know we've done it. You've done what I've asked you. You need to be paid for that. Very, very bad idea. Because you might say to me, I packed 16 boxes. You said, yes, but we didn't sell them. You say, excuse me, did you ask me to pack 16 boxes? Did I pack 16 boxes? Yep, pay me. You don't want that. That is so old-fashioned and it can only work in very, very few organizations which are not complex. They're just complicated. You cannot do in a complex world. You can't think like that. You have to think in objectives and key results. You say, what was my objective? My objective was to get back to solvency fast. Terrific. That was my objective. What are the key results I want? I want to know I'm earning enough money now to start paying back my debts so I can start getting back to a point where I can start doing more interesting things. So you have a look, were you focused on your objectives? It turns out that if you did something completely different, you'd be able to get the objectives, then do it. Change it. The objective remains the same. Just change how you're going to do these things. So you will have objectives. Objective is, I need to be solvent. There might be plenty of other ways of getting back to solvency, not the ones that you thought of. All you want is objectives and key results. What exactly is the result you want? And as soon as you've got those 2 things and you allow for a much looser planning situation, you can't just bumble into things. You've got to plan. But objectives and key results beat key performance indicators hands down every time. One is locking you in and silly. The other one is understanding we live in a complex environment where things change all the time and you won't be right all the time. There isn't a predetermined rule book by which you can follow to get where you want to go to. So just remember that. I think objectives and key results, and key performance indicators, and just cross out the KPIs. Okay, so this is where you get to with your goal and your plan. If we put all the stuff together, what's it look like? It would look something like this. Sorry, zoom in. Wrong one. You've got an impressionistic view of the future, and you've got that from your scenarios. You've been able to build time-bound goals. They're set to get the organization successful in the future. Your functional strategy is going to guide the organization's mode of functioning in the light of the scenarios. That overrides, you see, it overrides the goal and the plan. And what it's going to do, the plans are there. They're necessary for what you want. You can capture them in a balanced scorecard if you wish to, but just be fully prepared to tear up your balanced scorecard as often as you recreate your plans and you change your goals or adjust your goals. If you do that, you've got a pretty good chance of success. Now, one last part that's terribly important. We have to keep calm and play the long game. Let me explain what that means. We're talking strategy. We're talking strategy. You will not be successful tomorrow. Sorry. You will not be successful in a month or in 6 months. The success that you'll be able to get in 6 months will be ephemeral. You've got to play the long game, the long game. If you just think back to long-term customers, how long does it take you to create long-term customers? It takes you a long time. Everybody knows, anybody who's ever been in business knows that it takes 10 years to create a great business. In Silicon Valley, where you've got some of the smartest people working on businesses, not everybody in Silicon Valley succeeds, most of them fall over and die, but of those who do succeed, it takes 5 years to get to a stage where you are at scale. You're not making money, you're just at scale. You're at a scale now where after that point you can start making money as opposed to paying the bills. That's 5 years. It takes 10 years. And you say, come on, I can't wait 10 years. Not only can't you wait 10 years, but you probably don't have the attention span of 10 years. But there's no other way to do it. There is no business that you can make money in quickly. They don't exist. So please disabuse your mind of that. I've never, ever found any business that happened quickly. All businesses, great businesses, took decades to become great businesses, but no shorter than 10 years. In a year or two, you can have a business that survives and might make a bit of money. After 5 years, it's looking quite nice. It's got potential to become bigger. And after 10 years, you've got a business. You have to keep calm and play the long game. And that is so hard. That is so hard. So let me just give you a couple of tips on how to play the long game. There's 3 things that I think are really important. The first one is to create white space. If your diary is absolutely full with all the things you've got to do, don't think about being strategic. It's just not possible. You've got to carve out time which allows you to prepare for the long game. And it may be an hour a week, 2 hours a week, an hour a day, half a day sometime, but you've got to carve out space where you can just sit and think and plan and plot, not on how am I going to get the goods out the door tomorrow morning or how I can get that person to pack the stuff faster. It's how can I create something bigger and something better? And what are the steps I need to take now? I'm going to put some effort into so that in time it'll work. If your diary is full, it won't work. When your cup is full, you can't pour any more water into it. That's the fact. If your diary is chock-a-block full, you cannot play the long game. Next, it's terribly important that you focus on things that count. I came across this here a couple of days back, and I think it is absolutely brilliant. For me, it's brilliant. It's necessary for me. Some of you might find this as well. It was Warren Buffett who said, the difference between the successful people and the highly successful people, the difference between the successful and the highly successful is that the highly successful say no a lot. Say no. Say no to everything that you possibly can say no to. You cannot have a full diary and expect to achieve anything. You've got to say no to things. And the most important thing is just being careful enough that you don't say no to the wrong things. You have to focus on where it counts. So you create your white space where you can actually do some work around this, and then throughout your day, because you know what you're about, you focus on what counts. And the last part, and we stay strong and keep the faith. You cannot achieve anything of any success in 6 months or in 2 months. I'm sure you've all heard of people who became instant millionaires. And when the founder, Sam Walton, was asked how come his company was literally came from nowhere and boom, in no time at all was a massive success, he said to people, this overnight success took me 15 years. An overnight success takes 15 years. It'll take a long time, and you have to keep the faith for a very long time. And it's very hard, especially if people say, just cut it out already, it's nonsense. Enough. The easiest way to keep the faith is when you actually believe in or are excited about or interested in, and the easiest one is interested in, because the easiest thing to see what you're interested in, not interested in. The easiest thing is, what am I really interested in? Because if I'm interested and can hold my interest, it'll be much easier to get deeper and deeper and to hold the faith and to keep going on for a long, long time because I have interest. One of the hardest things, I think, is to say, my goal is to pay off my debts. My long-term goal is to pay off my debts. And when your debts are over, what comes after that? If that's a goal, it's an achievable goal by doing something else. You've got to think much longer than it's good, important, get out the way as fast as you can, but that can't be it. That's not enough. So you've got to create the white space, focus on where it counts, and keep going. But when you want to stop doing things and to create white space, you have to ask yourself some questions. Questions usually come up, should I be doing this at all? And you'll find out, possibly not. Possibly not. No, I keep the video stopping, but possibly shouldn't be doing this at all. Next question is, okay, it should be done. Can I get somebody else to do this? Or should I stop doing it altogether? Where should I focus my efforts so I get the biggest return? I can't do everything, so where will I get my biggest return? If I had to start afresh, would I choose to invest in this project? All these are the type of questions that you need to ask in order to free up space for yourself. Sorry. Then there's the keeping strong and holding on to what you believe in. And that's the hard part. But I think that at the end of the day, when you realize that it doesn't happen quickly, you'll see the difference. Let me just show you what you should remember, which will assist you in keeping the faith for a very long time. Somebody comes to you and says, you can have 3 million rand today. Think of this. No, sorry, $3 million. Multiply that by 15. $3 million today. Or I'll give you 1 cent that doubles every day for 30 days. Now just look at the first two items, please, not the bottom. 3 million today, what would you take? Or a cent that doubles every day over 30 days. 99.9% of people who aren't actuaries would come and tell you, listen, give me the 3 million right now, on the table right now. If you opted for the 1 cent a day option, after 1 week, you only have 64 cents. You say, 64 cents by this week. By the end of this week, I could have had 3 million. But you don't. But if you keep going, and then 1 cent was doubling every day for 30 days, after 3 weeks, you have 10,000. So 10,000 is not 3 million. 1 cent doubles very, very slowly in the beginning. Very slowly. After 28 days, you've got 1.3 million. But 1.3 million is not 3 million. It's 1.3 million. On the 28th day, you've only got 1.3 million. 30 days later, you've got 5,368,709 rand dollars and 12 cents. That's 5 1/3 compared to 3 million. But you had to wait. In the beginning, you see nothing. You see nothing at all. 1 week, 64 cents. 3 weeks, only 10,000. 28 days, so close, it's almost over. And I've only got 1.3 million. But if you just keep plodding on day in, day out, 1 cent each day, you'll get there. You'll get the bonanza and you'll hit the jackpot. And that's what I'd like to conclude with.
Ian, wow, you said that you had new content and so much to share with us, and I have enjoyed every single moment. I took the second option for what you have on the screen right now, so I'm very excited about that. And I would like to thank you so much for your time this morning. It's been an incredible hour-and-a-half webinar filled with absolute gems to help people go forward with their strategy. We are getting comments in the chat box to thank you, to let you know how wonderful it's been. And I look forward to working with you again, and not only waiting for Bootcamp part 2 in August, but rather than that, to include little webinars every now and again for our audience. Before we close off today, I would like to encourage everybody, please join us next week, Wednesday, the 16th of March, for Finance Made Simple with David Zeidel. This will be the 3rd module of the ORT Business Bootcamp. And if you did not manage to make a donation earlier this morning, please, I'm going to put up the donation poll now. If you would still like to donate to ORT, we will be putting up the poll. Please click on one of the boxes and